So, our 50 days of the Easter season are almost over. This is the last Sunday in the season of Easter in the church calendar, and next week we're going to begin another 50-day season, a celebration and series of lessons for life leading up to our 50th anniversary service on July 16th. And in that new sermon series, we're going to be looking at how we can transform ourselves and the world around us through 50 days of kindness. 50 days of kindness. And our guest preacher to kick this off next week on Pentecost will be our own Senior Pastor Emeritus, Reverend Dr. Brent Hawks. So you will definitely want to be here next week. And do not forget to wear red for Pentecost, okay? Wear red. So for the last few weeks since Easter, we've been reflecting together on the process of transformation and growth using the butterfly as a metaphor for our own lives and journeys. And it's not that I'm obsessed with bugs or butterflies. It's just, to me, they seem to be designed by God to be such amazing, intricate creatures, both in their beauty and in their behavior. And last week, we contemplated that just as butterflies leave their cocoons, and just as baby birds break out of their shells and leave the nest, we realized that we too sometimes need to let go of the past, to let go of old parts of ourselves in order to keep growing. And we are constantly going through changes. We go through changes in work, in family structures, in friendships, in our own beliefs and values, all throughout our lives. And when we give ourselves permission to say yes to new experiences and ways of being, that often means letting go of old habits and patterns, a kind of decluttering the mind and body and spirit. And I know that my wife is sitting at home watching this thinking, you could declutter the basement while you're at it. I'm going to hear about this later. Anyhow, for the past few weeks, we've pondered what it means to release what's no longer necessary, what's no longer serving us well, so that we can make room for positive changes. And that's something we probably need to do in our own personal lives and in our life together as a faith community. And at the end of the Easter season, we look back at the resurrection and begin to understand that sometimes we need to let go of the past, not only of what we expect in the future, but also even of our capacity to understand the mysteries of the divine. Sometimes we just need to let go of how we thought our lives would work and learn to find joy in the lives that we're actually living. And sometimes we need to do it over and over and over again. It's a process, not an event. Now, in today's lesson for life, we contemplate a leap forward, ready to soar to new heights and break away from the things that have kept us bound, breaking out of our cocoons, and like the butterfly, taking flight. And the butterfly emerges from the cocoon with an urgent quest. It is on a mission from God. And as soon as it takes flight, it's got to feed. It has to stay nourished, and it has to procreate. Now, most butterflies have a very short lifespan, generally only a few weeks. So once they're out of the cocoon, they really don't have a lot of time to waste. And what they need to do is fly around, flower to flower, and find another butterfly to procreate with. Basically, they are constantly cruising for sex. I gave some serious thought to making a slide for this showing two butterflies mating. I will note that the female generally is on top, but just saying, thought better of it. Anyhow, this is an important thing for the butterfly because in its previous incarnation as a caterpillar, it couldn't travel very far or very fast, and more to the point, caterpillars can't procreate. Butterflies, however, can do both. Butterflies like the monarch can and do actually fly clear across continents. Monarch butterflies born here in Canada may migrate as far as Mexico in the winter. And I kind of wondered how this worked if they only live a few weeks. And then I learned something new. Basically, most butterflies, like I said, just live a few weeks. And in the spring, you'll see a lot of caterpillars, and then they hatch out to butterflies, and they mate, and they lay eggs, and they hatch out into caterpillars, and so on and so on. And another generation is born every few weeks. And every year, starting in the spring, when the weather warms up, and continuing through the summer, there will be several generations of butterflies born and die. And it turns out that the third generation of monarchs birthed in an annual migratory group is sometimes called the Methuselah generation, because somehow, mysteriously and wonderfully, they're equipped to live 7 or 8 months. Isn't that amazing? Much longer than any other generation. And it's the third generation. How do they know? You may have heard the name Methuselah before. It's actually a biblical name. Anybody ever heard of Methuselah? Few? Okay. He's one of the patriarchs named in the 5th chapter of Genesis. He was supposedly the grandfather of Noah. Remember him? Anyhow, Methuselah was said to have lived 969 years, which is the longest lifespan of anyone listed in the Bible. As a side note, a few months ago, I was getting some Ethiopian food at a restaurant up on the Danforth, and while I was waiting, I was chatting with a man there who told me that his name was actually Methuselah. It's apparently a not uncommon name in Ethiopia. And so naturally, I couldn't resist asking him how old he was. And I immediately regretted having done so, because as it turned out, he's younger than I am. It's true, you heard it first. I'm older than Methuselah. Anyhow, back to the butterflies. They've metamorphosized, they've been transformed, and as such, they are no longer limited by what they were before. They don't have to stay stuck on the same leaf their mother laid their egg on, because now they can fly. And I'm really hoping that I don't have to bang you all over the head with this metaphor. You may think I've done so, but I'm hoping that you get that I am not just talking about bugs. I'm talking about us, about how when we grow spiritually, we are a whole new creature, and we are not limited by our past. Y'all are getting that, right? Yeah. Oh, thank God, because next week we're off on a whole new series on how we grow into the people God calls us to be. And if you haven't gotten this message in the past 7 weeks, I just really don't know what else to do. But you're getting it. You are. Thank God. We still have more in common with a little bug, a little butterfly, than we ever thought we did. You know, for the butterfly, the sky is literally the limit. And I think human beings, when we are freed from whatever is holding us back, we have unlimited potential. Like the Dr. Seuss poem that Marilyn read, "Oh, the places we'll go." You're off to great places, you're off and away, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know, and you are the one who will decide where to go. Now, I'm not saying we're not going to encounter obstacles. I'm not saying we'll always succeed in what we try. I'm not saying the world won't try to stop us. I'm saying that we can be transformed, and we can transform the world. The anthropologist Margaret Mead famously said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has." Case in point, there was a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals in the gospel lesson that I read. And it's the story of a person who was paralyzed and wanted to get to Jesus. Now, perhaps the characters who helped him get to Jesus are friends who were dogged enough to find any way possible for them to reach Jesus and be blessed. And they weren't deterred by the crowds blocking the way on the ground. No, they went up on the roof and literally lowered the guy down right in front of Jesus. Now, when I was a kid in the Baptist Sunday school, this was a fun story. We studied about it, I think, a month of Sundays, and there were a lot of crafts involved. So first, we built a little house out of a shoebox for Jesus to preach in. And then we made a little stretcher out of popsicle stitch for the person who was paralyzed. And then we made little cardboard figures for Jesus and the person on the stretcher and the friends of the crowd. And then the really fun part, we cut a hole in the top of the shoebox house and carefully lowered the stretcher in for Jesus to heal the person. It was epic. And to this day, I am not sure what precisely we were supposed to have learned from all that. Something about Jesus healing, maybe something about the value of friendship and helping one another, maybe something about taking a Sawzall to the roof when you can't get in somewhere, maybe not. Maybe, just maybe, the essence of the story is the daring and creative nature of those who broke through the roof to access the liberating, healing presence of Jesus. And maybe it can show us how we're all called to become daring and creative as we seek to be the kind of people who will find ways to bring God's liberating love, including breaking boundaries, tearing down walls, or opening up the roof to possibility, where only the sky is then the limit. And I think the folks who were helping the paralyzed person were determined to have them healed after learning of Jesus' acts of healing. And because of their acts, their daring, their creativity, what was once bound has been freed. Like the butterfly encased in a cocoon opening its wings and taking flight, the one who was bound to lie on a mat or be carried around was able to get up and walk. All because some people dreamed big dreams and were prepared to raise the roof so that someone else could experience the healing grace of God. The butterfly, when it emerges from the cocoon, has to live its life in a completely new and different way. And the people looking to get their friends in to see Jesus were confronted with obstacles that they had to overcome in a radically strange way. New problems require new solutions. Old solutions won't do anymore. And God knows over the past few years, we've encountered a whole raft of new problems in this old world. Can I get an amen? Amen. But you know what? That's been happening ever since the beginning of time. Every generation gets a whole new set of challenges. Every day we encounter countless opportunities as individuals and as communities of faith, and they are cleverly disguised as insurmountable problems. And as a progressive faith community, we're called to have the courage to be creators of love and justice in new and different ways, as people living today in today's world with all of its modern challenges. And going forward, like the butterfly, we have to have the courage to challenge established ways of doing. And the phrase, "we never did it that way before," has absolutely no place in the future. The writer Brian McLaren puts it that if a spiritual community only points back to where it's been, or if it only digs in its heels where it is now, it's a dead end or a parking lot, not a way. We are on a way, following the liberating, healing way of Jesus, and God calls us to be fully and abundantly alive in the world, unbound from whatever has contained us in the past. So now go out into your lives filled with joy and a sense of adventure to live more fully into this beloved community. Oh, the places we'll go. Amen? Amen.